Good evening, everybody. I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the James City County Planning Commission. It is November 6th, 2024 at 6 p.m. Ms. Istanis, will you call the roll, please?
Dr. Ullman.
Present.
Dr. Ullman represents the Roberts District. Mr. May.
Here.
Mr. May represents the Powhatan District. Mr. Everson.
Here.
Mr. Everson represents the Stonehouse District. Mr. Rogers.
Here.
Mr. Rogers represents the Berkeley District. Mr. Haldeman.
Here.
Mr. Haldeman is an at-large member. Mr. Polster.
Here.
Mr. Polster represents the Jamestown District. And Mr. O'Connor.
Present.
Mr. O'Connor is an at-large member and is chair of the commission. I'm Susan Istanis, Director of Planning for the county. It's my pleasure to serve as secretary to the commission. Sitting to my left is Ms. Liz Parman, Deputy County Attorney. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Before we start on our meeting this evening, we have one alteration to the agenda. So public hearing number 1, SUP-24-0012, 3512 Barrett's Ferry Drive Tourist Home. The applicant has withdrawn their application, so there will be no public hearing. At this point, they have not indicated that they intend to move forward with their application anytime. So there will be no public hearing on that tonight, and the application is withdrawn. So if there's anybody here for that case, you're welcome to make comments at the public comment section, but again, the application's not moving forward, so we'll leave that up to your discretion. So next on our agenda tonight is the public comment section, and this is a time reserved for anything that is not on a public hearing this evening, and I will open to the floor for comments. Hearing and seeing none, we will move on to reports of the commission. Mr. Rogers, DRC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Development Review Committee met on Wednesday, October 23, 2024 at 4 p.m. There were 2 new business items. In both cases, the applicant is the same, Bright Beginnings, Pre-K, both appeal decisions made by our Director of Planning, and both applications cite identical reasons for the request, which affect project developments at 2 Williamsburg James City County elementary schools. First new business item was SP 240062, Bright Beginning Pre-K Center at Clara Bird Baker Elementary, appeal of the Director of Planning determination. Background: Williamsburg James City County Public Schools submitted a site plan to allow for the construction of a 42,000 square foot pre-K center at 3175 and 3131 Ironbound Road. Section 24-35 of the zoning ordinance states that pedestrian and bicycle accommodations shall be required for subject properties along all public roads as shown on the Pedestrian Accommodation Master Plan and Regional Bikeways Plan. There is an existing sidewalk along Clara Bird Baker's frontage, and it is within the right-of-way, providing pedestrian connectivity to the parcels east and west of the property. However, there is currently no bike lane along this section of Ironbound Road. The applicant requested a modification from this sidewalk and bike lane requirement based on exceptions provided in Section 2435, paragraph D sub 2 of the James City County zoning ordinance. The applicant argued that their plan for a single multi-use path would be safer for children, that would allow more trees to remain in place. It would cause less confusion as it may take decades for the Regional Bikeways Plan to be completed, thus forcing bicyclists to weave in and out of traffic. The applicant represented to the DRC that VDOT approves of their multi-use path alternative. The planning director had found that the request to allow for modification of this sidewalk and bike lane requirement did not meet the exception criteria established by Section 24-35. Specifically, that putting the bike lane adjacent to the road, as has been done in other parts of the county, and the incursion on the existing trees did not meet the criteria for a topographical exception, nor was the safety argument controlling. Staff recommended the DRC uphold the planning director's determination that the project did not qualify for an exception. After discussion, a motion was made in the DRC to approve an exception, which would allow the existing sidewalk to remain and no additional construction of pedestrian or bicycle accommodations. And that motion was approved 3-1. The second new business item, SP 240063, Bright Beginnings Pre-K Center at Norge Elementary. Again, appeal of the Director of Planning. And again, Williamsburg James City County Public Schools submitted a site plan which would allow for construction of a 42,000 square foot pre-K center at 7311 Richmond Road. Apart from the address, the issues raised and the arguments were largely identical to the situation at Clara Bird Baker. The additional factors argued by the appellant on this application were that for this particular location, it would require the additional granting or an extension of the right-of-way on the property. And with that, complicated relocation of an electric traffic signal, of street signs, of a plumbed fire hydrant, and the destruction of most or all of the existing trees along this section of Richmond Road, all that would be required in order to install any VDOT standard option for the site. After review, the planning director determined that complications in granting this right-of-way and the movement of items within that proposed right-of-way were not considered qualifying for a topographical exemption. After discussion, the committee made a motion to approve the exception. That motion was passed 4-0. Subject to any questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Any questions for Mr. Rogers? No policy committee.
No policy committee.
So we are on to our consent agenda. We have 3 items on our consent agenda this evening. The first is the minutes of the October 2, 2024 regular meeting of the Planning Commission. Development Review Committee action item SP-24-0062, Bright Beginnings Pre-K Center at Clara Bird Baker Elementary. And Development Review Committee action item SP-24-0063, Bright Beginnings Pre-K Center at Norge Elementary. So those are our 3 items. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
So we have a motion to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on our agenda this evening is Master Plan -24-004 / zoning -24-0010 Powhatan Terrace Master Plan and Proffer Amendment. Mr. Crump, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Mr. Greg Davis, on behalf of JTR Properties LLC, has applied to amend the master plan and proffers for a 15.42 acre parcel at 1676 Jamestown Road. The subject parcel is zoned R2 general residential and is designated for low density residential on the 2045 comprehensive plan. The original proffers and master plan were for an affordable multifamily residential project known as Powhatan Terrace. The property owner now requests to amend the master plan and proffers to permit 4 single-family lots. The proposed changes include a new master plan for 4 single-family lots, a 150-foot vegetated buffer, and a 5-foot sidewalk along Jamestown Road. Staff finds the proposal compatible with surrounding zoning and development and generally consistent with the 2045 comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance. And staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the Board of Supervisors of the amended proffers and master plan. Thank you for your time this evening and happy to answer any questions you may have. And Mr. Davis, I believe he is here and willing to answer any questions as well. And I believe he has a brief presentation too.
Thank you, Mr. Crump. Any questions for staff? Thank you very much. This time I will go ahead and open the public hearing. And Mr. Davis, I have a speaker card for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, and members of the commission. I'm Greg Davis, attorney with the James City County offices of Kaufman and Knowles. It's my pleasure to be here tonight representing the applicant. The project team is my client, the Wise family. Scott Wise is here, may be known to you, longtime county businessman, and his wife Jen. Scott's son-in-law, Cole Jones, is here, and Cole and Scott and Jen's daughter, Maddie, intend to build a home on this property if this case is approved tonight. Our engineer is Steve Romeo with VHB, and my firm, Benny Zhang, and myself are pleased to represent the applicant. A short presentation for you because I submit it's a relatively simple case, but the bottom line is less intensive residential development, a major reduction from the 36-unit cluster townhome to 4 residential lots. The 150-foot planted community character corridor will be retained. That's been proffered in the past. Of course, it's in the comprehensive plan. The 4 single-family homes will produce little or no traffic impact on Jamestown Road. And the plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which calls for low-density residential. I did the math. I think this translates to 0.4 units per acre. Although the sidewalk is not contiguous along this stretch of Jamestown Road, we've proffered to construct a 5-foot sidewalk to continue the effort to extend that sidewalk toward the river. The townhouse plan had proffered a certain amount of open space, just over 8 acres. And it was important as we filed this application for me to come before you tonight and say there will be no less open space. And so I can say to you there will be no less open space. In fact, there's about 1/10 of an acre more open space preserved as a part of this proffer and master plan. And finally, but I think probably most importantly to many of the planning commissioners, is there's less environmental impact here adjacent to Powhatan Creek. Just to orient you, this is the master plan as part of the package. Here's Jamestown Road over on the right of your page, and there's Powhatan Creek frontage of the property here to the left of the page. So the open space that was historically preserved in the townhouse project which was approved is this area here, RPA and also area outside the RPA on the creek side of the property. And as I say, we're at preservation now of 8.85, nearly 9 acres of open space. The 4 single-family units will involve significantly reduced impervious cover. And that translates into less pollutant export into Powhatan Creek, which is just adjacent to this site. Mr. Romeo's lectured me on the fact that that means less phosphorus, nitrogen, coliform bacteria into Powhatan Creek, that wonderful resource in our county. On the river side of the property is Raleigh Square townhomes, which were built long before James City County had a sophisticated stormwater management ordinance. And the outfall for the stormwater runoff from Raleigh Square is here where I indicate with the pointer. That outfall now has eroded a ditch into my client's property. Mr. Wise said you could stand in it, it would be head high, and that is eroding, carrying sediment down toward Powhatan Creek. Part of this plan will be to address that stream degradation and remediate the damage with rock and then a micro bioretention area. There's some bamboo invasive species on the property here. The plan will be to clear that. And then some of you have been in James City County long enough to remember when Rush Norman had a convenience store with gas pumps and a battery shop there on Jamestown Road. And Mr. Norman had cleared much of that area, obviously, for his gas pumps, and so his shop was visible. And that area, which will be incorporated into the community character corridor buffer for this project, is open. Our proffers and plan call for planting of that community corridor, character corridor protection area. 4 lots are located here. Large lot here incorporates a lot of the open space, but also an ample building envelope. This will be the community character corridor buffer, and this represents the preservation of green space, open space on the creek side of the property. So members of the commission, I'm happy to answer your questions. It seems a nice move to reduce the density here. We've talked to the neighbors Scott Wise was on site with Kensett Teller this week, showed her a plan. She's ecstatic at the reduced density. We've reached out to Lyman and Debbie Hall, haven't tracked them down, but heard no objection. And so it's a non-controversial case from our perspective, and I would respectfully request that the commission recommend approval of the case to the board.
Mr. Davis, any questions for Mr. Davis or the applicant? Alderman?
I just want to, I'm not familiar with the term microbioretention basin. Could you help me with that, please?
I think Mr. Romeo might be able to help you better than I am, Mr. Holmes.
Good evening, commission members, Chair. Steve Romeo, VHB, 351 McLaws Circle, right around the corner in Bush Corporate Center. Micro just refers to the size. It's small. It's compact. The area that Mr. Davis was referring to, where the Raleigh Square development discharges onto Mr. Wise's property, has eroded into a steep gully, and that micro pool is designed to be a small, just a small area of rock that stabilizes that area, and it has a depression in it to allow the water to settle before it flows through the rock into the rest of the natural channel. So micro just means small.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Other questions for the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak to this application? Seeing and hearing none, I will close the public hearing and turn it over for discussion.
I could just kick off by first disclosing that I've known Scott Wise for many years. I don't think it's affecting or clouding my judgment. This is also my district, so I have great interest in what goes on down there. And the most frequent thing I hear from people who live in this area is too many units and too much runoff. And so seeing this one go the direction it goes, to me, is nothing but a win situation for Berkeley District, so I intend to support it.
Mr. Rogers, any other comments?
I agree with Mr. Rogers. I think this is a good use of the property, and I would support this as well.
We've seen this application or a number of times over its long history. Just, you know, and the applicant worked very hard to shoehorn this development in there a number of years ago with a lot of attention paid to all the environmental concerns. You know, probably because of my longevity, I always get concerned when I see master plan amendments come back through, because it always seems to be a whittling away at the edges on what was approved at some point. You know, I'm disappointed. Personally, I'm just disappointed that we'll be losing 36 more of the workforce and affordable housing units, but I recognize the sensitivity of the environmental issues in this area. And, you know, while other times I'd be less inclined to support such a drastic change, I think this makes a much higher use of that property along Jamestown Road there. So I'll intend to support that as well. No other discussion. I'll entertain a motion.
Approve MP 24004, Z 240010, Powhatan Terrace Master Plan and Proffer Amendment. That's a mouthful.
With the conditions that were submitted.
Conditions as submitted.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ms. Istanis, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Mr. Polster?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Everson?
Aye.
Mr. May?
Aye.
Dr. Allman?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Our next public hearing this evening, SUP 24 0025 7516 Richmond Road, Dollar Tree. Mr. Crump, welcome back.
Yeah, good evening again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Mr. Ethan Alexander, on behalf of Norge Center Incorporated, has applied for a special use permit for a commercial building that exceeds 5,000 square feet of floor area. The proposed building is for a Dollar Tree store for the property at 7516 Richmond Road, currently an undeveloped parcel within the Norge Crossing Shopping Center. This parcel is zoned B1 General Business with Proffers and is designated Community Commercial on the 2045 Comprehensive Plan. The proposed building will be approximately 9,900 square feet and will be served by the existing infrastructure and access and egress from private roads internal to the shopping center. These internal roads have existing entrances and exits on Richmond Road and Norge Lane, and an additional entrance is being constructed from Croker Road to align with the entrance to the station at Norge Apartments. Staff has proposed conditions to mitigate potential impacts, including requiring consistency with the proposed architectural elevations and prohibiting the display of merchandise outside the store. Staff finds the proposal compatible with our surrounding zoning and generally consistent with the 2045 Comprehensive Plan and zoning ordinance. Therefore, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the special use permit to the Board of Supervisors, subject to the proposed conditions. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions, and believe there's a number of applicant people on their team here this evening, and they'd be happy to talk to you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Crump. Any questions for Mr. Crump? Mr. Alderman?
When there's, Mr. Crump, there's a reference to an exit onto Croker Road opposite the station at Norge. How would that work? It doesn't look like this property extends that far.
So I think this is an outdated aerial here, but looking at like the master plan, you can see there's sort of a new road, here we go, being built along here, and it's being extended up the property. If you go back to that satellite view, thank you. So you can kind of see here the road, right where the kind of red is for the property, and it's kind of going to curve up, and then it will go to the intersection there, right there at the apartments there on Croker Road, station at Norge.
That road's complete.
The road's already there.
Okay, all right.
It's in and operating.
Right, and on top of it, they've got turn lanes in that whole thing too. It's done very well.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Crump? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. This time, I will go ahead and open the public hearing. And Mr. Getty, how are you this evening?
Very well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Vernon Getty. It's my pleasure to be here representing the applicant. Also here, Mr. Rick Bushy and Joe Bush, applicant, and most of you know Mr. owners of the shopping center. We agree with the staff report, think this is a good use for this location and the infrastructure is in place to serve it. So we would respectfully ask you to recommend approval to the board and would be happy to try to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Getty? Mr. Getty, I got one. You're not off the hook yet, just because I get lots of questions.
Thought I had it.
And I understand you might not be able to disclose it, but are there additional plans for the vacant parcel that's, in this case, just sort of northeast?
I can't answer that because I'm representing just the Dollar Tree developer.
Fair enough. So I'll find Mr. Massey afterwards. So sounds
Very good.
So any other questions for Mr. Getty or the applicant?
Thank you
Thank you,
very
sir.
much.
Is there anybody that wishes to speak to this application? Hearing and seeing none, I will close the public hearing and turn it over to my colleagues. Bolster?
I'm glad to see this kind of an infill in that area, and especially with the turn lane off of Croker that takes the pressure off of that stoplight at St. Bede's that goes into the shopping area. So I really like the design of that and how it will mitigate the traffic on Richmond Road, which is, as well as that the widening of the Croker also is going to help that issue, even though it's a kind of a mess. I was impressed with the turn lane going into the place and that road that they put in already, which was nice to see. So I think this is a good fit, good location for it. I intend to support this.
And for those who don't know the area, there's been a tremendous amount of work adding sidewalks, improving stormwater. At Norwich Lane, it put a new crossing in with flashing lights to create a safe haven for crossing. That's the Richmond Road and Croker Road interchange gets a little busy, and there's a lot of people crossing the road back and forth. So I think between the county and VDOT, there's been significant improvements in that stretch to make it more accessible for walkers and folks trying to get to the bus stops. No other discussion. I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Polster?
Mr. Chairman, I propose that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors the approval for special use permit 24-0025 at 7516 Richmond Road, Dollar Tree.
With proposed
Conditions.
SUP conditions.
Right, sorry.
So, great. So, Stannis, we have a motion.
Oh, God, disclosure, I have talked with Mr. Getty, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Meant to
Sorry.
tell
I did too.
Okay. Sorry, thank you very
Frank.
much. Appreciate that. We'll note it. So we have a motion to approve. So,
Mr. Haldeman?
Aye.
Mr. Polster?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers? Mr. Everson? Mr. May?
Aye.
Dr. Allman?
Aye.
Mr. O'Connor?
aye.
Motion carries.
Great. Thank you very much. So we have no planning commission considerations, and we are on to the planning director's report. Ms. Stannis.
The report is before you. I have nothing else to add to it. If you have any questions, I'll happy to try to answer them.
Any questions for Ms. Stannis? Very much. So, we're off to planning commission discussions and requests. Just Mr. Haldeman and Dr. Allman have switched months, so Mr. Haldeman's going to take November for the Board of Supervisors, and Dr. Allman's going to take December. So, thank you.
I had one item that I wanted to just throw out, and maybe the staff will take it under consideration. It's the bike lane issue that we saw for both of these. And what was left out of the staff minutes was a comment that I made. There's a dental a dental firm next to St. Bede's Church in Norwich. And we had an SUP to make some adjustments, of which they would have had to put a bike lane in and the sidewalk and all the rest of that. If you go back and take a look at the comp plan and you look at the Norwich corridor, one of the things you'll see in there is a description of how that when they widened 60 years and years ago, it happened to Toano also, is they ended up taking the front lawns off of all those areas. So when you stood on the sidewalk next to the dental place, 6 feet above is a BMP, and then a set of telephone lines that go all the way down, and power lines that were never going to be moved on that. And at the time, I made the comment that when I made the presentation for this at the board's meeting, Mr. McGlennon made the comment that maybe we should relook at the bike lane issue, because there was no way you were going to extend it past where it is right now, which is by the St. Bede's, all the way up, and there's neither way on the other side. So part of my concern was that we're going to hold the school to something, and it was never going to be continued at all, anytime, because of the restrictions on the land on that. And so the same thing really kind of goes to the Ironbound Road and the safety issue that Steve had on this thing. And so I really would like us to go ahead and take an action, at least on the staff side, because that was one of the comp plan items, was to relook at that bike piece and see what's really possible or not. And then this way, it doesn't hold the staff hostage to a ordinance that they have no choice to make any other recommendation but what it says, despite whatever the common sense of it, whatever it is. And so I think it's kind of unfair to the staff to be put in that kind of a position. And then the catch-22 to this whole thing, if you're not familiar with it, is that if you get a deferral, like we just granted for the two of them, that doesn't mean that you get away with it, because you're now liable to pay the cost of that bike lane, anything else like that, to a fund that the county has called a bike fund. And so that's kind of a catch-22 for the applicant when he's made a case to do it and there's some reason to it. But once again, the way the ordinance is structured is it's a requirement for it. So this is about the third and fourth case I've seen here just in the last year. And I just, I'm not so sure that makes any sense. I'm not so sure that it does any good for the staff to be put in positions like that. So that's my request.
I will mention your comments to Paul. And,
Okay.
and I've had similar discussions with him as well in terms of the content of the ordinance and the difficulties. And so I know he's aware of it. I'm just not sure of what the timing is going to be in terms of looking at that bike plan, which was a 2011 document, I believe.
And I don't want to beat up on the staff guy either for it. I mean, he's just doing what he's supposed to do. So anyhow, thank you.
And I'll just add to the conversation, when we were looking at the one on Ironbound, the way that they wanted to do the bike lane wasn't going to benefit bikers. I mean, it was going to take care of kids who were riding their bikes to school, but for the folks who who travel in packs biking around the community, it wasn't going to help them because it was going to take them off the road, and it just didn't make a lot of sense. So I would much rather see a shareway, with VDOT when they resurface that road, create a bike lane on the roadway for, to help those who want for recreation or for transportation use bicycles. So.
Well, the other piece of that, as I brought up in the meeting, is the Powhatan Bike Trail. And everybody said, well, that just connects the Capitol Trail and whatever. That Powhatan Trail goes through a whole bunch of neighborhoods. It comes into the back way to the school. And so it's just another safe way to be able to still meet the needs. And I agree with Steve, we need to turn the page here and do something about electric cars and bikes and make it more usable. And if Rob was here, he'd be bounding on the desk to say, yeah, we need that. Anyhow, there you go.
Mr. Everson?
I noticed that City of Newport News recently changed their ordinance in terms of parking. And when I was reading about that, I know a lot of it's for residential, but happened to, the day I read it, happened to be up near Williamsburg Crossing. And they got this huge parking lot. There's nobody in them. And I was wondering if we've ever taken a look at our kind of parking requirements, because it seems to me with all the impervious surface and all that stuff, and if they're not being, routine used, make any sense. Prime retail, I get prime retail. Every time I go in there, there's a lot of cars, even in the off season. But I don't know if there's going to be any other future stuff coming in that would require a lot of parking, but it seems to me that we might want to look at what we require. I know the City of Williamsburg News apparently, I gather it took them a long time to come up with a new parking ordinance, reducing the amount of parking spaces that are required. I don't know if anybody else has got any concerns about that, but I don't know, it just seems to me that some of these places have huge parking lots that aren't used, and Teeter and Lightfoot, but even Harris Teeter right out here, there's always parking spaces available.
I saw the same article and had the same kind of thought that you had. And what came to mind was on Richmond Road up at Lightfoot, Smith Baptist Church, you remember that one that's
Oh,
over
yeah.
on the left-hand side? They came in with an SUP or a change to the corridor side, and they ended up with a problem because of the number of parking spaces that a church required. And of course, the thing that struck me is that ordinance and that number was based on something that happened years and years ago, as opposed to what it is today and how people are using transportation. And the argument that they made was that people are coming together in one car, not two or three for it. So that kind of bothered me that we have some ordinance. Now, on the other hand, I've always taken Tim's side when we come to our townhouses and the high-density pieces with the number of spaces, parking spaces that you have. And I really sometimes feel that they're not really adequate for the number of cars that you see in these neighborhoods. So it's kind of like, context dependent in terms of what those are. I mean, we ran into the same thing at the Two Drummers barbecue place too, with the number of parking spaces that they needed. So where the answer is, given the different scenarios that the staff runs into, to be able to come up with something logical. And frankly, we're not Newport News, sorry.
No, I fully understand we're not Newport News, but, and a lot of that was because of residential parking, particularly downtown.
Right.
Okay, but I just jogged me, if I hadn't been up to Williamsburg Crossing that very same day, I said, wait, this whole parking lot's empty. And you see Target parking lot, at Newtown, it's punched in by the door, by the door, but then you have all these spaces kind of out there, and it seems to me it's, I don't know. I just thought I'd throw it out. What you want to do with it, I'm not going to go to the mat on this one, but I just thought I'd bring it up.
I think if I recall correctly, for the Harris Teeter development, we did consider a lesser density or a lesser requirement for parking. Yeah. So, I mean, just given the different uses that were in there, that they would become at different times of the day. So, and that does does remain a parking lot.
That works out well, but even over here, there's a lot of empty parking spaces, and Target, the thought about the church.
Thank you. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to our December meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank